Welcome to the third video in the Purpose of Existence series. Today I'm going to talk about salvation. And just for a reminder, in the last video I spoke about the good purpose for existence and that it requires a type of existence with a persona, and that persona wishes good. And this persona is what we call God, which is the source of all that exists, the cause of all causes, who wishes good, and with whom you may be in a loving relationship. We also covered the one ideal, the one and only ideal, which is the absolute good, and I gave an example for what the absolute good could be. And here we see a group of individuals, or a society made up of individuals, which we also call a collective. And we said that what is good both for the individual and for the collective could be an example of an absolute good. And we then extended the definition to the family, because the family is the production unit of new individuals. And so we said that what's good for the individual, the family, and the collective could be an absolute good. And today I want to talk about the challenges, or the psychological challenges, that this brings about. This absolute good requires noble individuals because everything is voluntary, and it requires a restraint from the individual. It requires compassion, and it requires sacrifice from the individual for the sake of the collective. And then the question is, how do we make such individuals? The overriding principle is called love your fellow man as yourself, which is attributed to Rabbi Akiva from 2,500 years ago. And I'm going to use the Kabbahlistic model to explain what is the makeup of this angelic individual. And so the first level, the bottom level, is impulse control. And once you obtain impulse control, you can feed into it, or you can draw into it, judgment, or a good judgment. And that already puts you in a situation of a culture. And then the question is, where do you take the good judgment? And here the Kabbalah tree describes two components: the eternal principles and flexibility. And here I'm going to note a question, which is, why are the eternal principles on the right hand side, and is there a significance to that? The answer is yes, and we will address it in the next slides along with the other questions. And then the question is, how do we decide which principles or which things should be guided by eternal principles and what should be flexible? And in order to know that, or to help us decide that, there is an ideology, and that ideology is called mercy. And so I'll add another question, which is, what is mercy? And this ideology of mercy basically is drawing from two sentiments. On the right hand side, the sentiment of love and compassion, and on the left hand side, the sentiment of fierceness and exacting justice. And here another question comes in, is, why can't we do with just love? Why do we need to have fierceness or exacting justice in the system? And these sentiments draw from at the top, the goodwill, which is the place where we meet the godly will, the general will of the purpose of existence, which we can feel or see through our good intuition. And then it feeds us with a desire to understand, and we develop an understanding of what is good and what is not good, and those things feed into the sentiments. And so the last question that I'll add relates to the principle itself of love your fellow man as yourself, what is the difference? What does as yourself mean? What is the difference between how we love ourselves and how we love our fellow man? And what is the principle asking us to change? And so let's start answering those questions. Let's first address the question of why love is not the ultimate ideal. The first reason is that fierceness is part of existence, so it's part of God's world, and that's why we have to cope with it. The second reason is that it must be tamed and integrated. And there was once upon a time a culture with somewhat genocidal tendencies which adopted the principle of love as the chief ideal, but it continued to exact justice and commit genocides, and so it didn't really help. And it's as if you have a wolf in the house and you expect it not to eat babies. And so that's why it's very important to tame the wolf and turn it into a sheepdog. And if you don't do that, you also won't be able to distinguish between a wolf and a sheepdog, and you will find yourself condemning the sheepdog and embracing the wolf, or condemning policemen and praising criminals. The last reason is that any ideal that is not the absolute good is an idol. The next question that I'll address is, what does as yourself mean? And the answer is that we should err on the side of love and forgiveness, because the difference between how we love ourselves and how we love others is that we tend to be more judgmental of others and more forgiving of ourselves. And what this principle is asking of us is to treat others with the same forgiveness that we treat ourselves. And for that reason, the right side should be the stronger side. So the side of love should be stronger than the side of fierceness and exacting justice. And the eternal principles should focus more on the compassion and forgiveness side. And the last question that we need to answer is, what is the definition of mercy? And mercy is basically the integration of compassion with tamed fierceness. And so that's all I have for today, and let me know if you have any questions in the comments.